morning. So today we are here to start off our discussions and sessions. We are going to have a brief discussions on DevNetOps automation for 5G and beyond. I myself, Sudipta Devnath, technical leader of Cisco, would like to take you through the journey. We are going to share our experience to you regarding our thought on the DevNetOps automations for the 5G. Nonetheless, I would be appreciated if these discussions happen in a discussion mode, not exactly as a session. Being said that, I would like to introduce Richard also over here. Richard, hand it over to you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for coming. I know it's Thursday. I'm so glad to see you guys here. Let's keep this session very interactive today. We'll ask some questions and learn something from you. We always learn from our customers when we present. Just to recap, my name is Richard Froome. I run a software automation team within CX, and we're doing a lot around DevNetOps or DevNetOps and services as code. We have a lot to talk about today, and we'll touch on some of these topics. We'll also cover some taxonomy, because we know sometimes you see things like DevNetOps, NetDevOps. And of course, we asked ChatGPT what these terms mean, but of course, we'll go through that today and explain some of this terminology. And we'll hand it back to Sudipta to continue our discussion.
So before we start off the session, I would request all of you to get registered in the Cisco WebEx app. The details has been provided over here. You can join in the WebEx team space, and if you have any questions after the sessions, we can always keep it on our discussions up over that WebEx team space. Now, let us start our journey. So we are going to cover a couple of topics over today. The first thing is that, as you can see over here, that introduction, and then followed by a quick glance of 5G architecture overview. Then we will be jumping into our discussions on the role of automation in 5G. The core part is going to cover up by CI/CD and DevNetOps, use cases, case study, and followed by that, how Cisco envisioning the DevNetOps today's service provider place, and conclusions. Now let's start. Before I start the discussions, I would like to have a question to all of you that how many of you are familiar about the DevNetOps? None of you? Okay, let me start it in this way. Have you ever heard of the term called CI/CD and DevOps? Okay, so what is your understanding on the CI/CD? Any thought? Okay.
Good.
So let's start, okay? So when we talk about the DevOps, basically, there are a couple of things we need to understand at this point of time with respect to the network automation, right? The network automation doesn't equal to the automated network. So when I say I would like to automate the network activities, that doesn't mean that I'm going to automate the whole networks, right? So most of the networking industries and most of our network operations feel that network automation doesn't deliver a fully automated network. However, in recent era, the network industry has built the products of ever-increasing quality of the network automation. So what does that mean? That with software releases, software changes in the network, there is a need that we should have proceeded towards the continuous evolvement of the network, right? And how faster we can do that in the 5G network space, that is where always the service provider looks upon. Now, being said that, what is the most important thing when we come for the network automation? We know that simplicity is the prerequisite for reliability. So if you need a reliable network in the 5G space or beyond 5G space, then you want the process to be simplified. You need the process to be automated. and how that can be automated. That is what is being defined in the DevOps. So if I can roll it out, my first sentence that, what is CI/CD? CI/CD basically offers you a set of tool chain set which can automate the network functionality to be happened in a simplistic manner and provide you the reliable operations of the network. If we all of us agree to this particular statement, then we can jump into the next understanding why DevNetOps and how it is going to be implemented. Is there anyone in this room who is not agreeing to the statement that simplistic operations is very much needed for the network operation and automation? You need it, right? So let's see why we need the DevOps. So first thing is that we would like to simplify our outcome. The second thing is that we have a lot of process and planning when we go for the network operations, right? So we definitely need a method which has to be efficient, which has to be effective, reliable, and agile. When I say that agile, it means basically how quickly I can make the changes in a reliable mode. That is very important. The last and not least is that what we would like to achieve out of this, and that is where being defined in the DevNetOps. So if you can follow me up with the right-hand side of this slide, basically, so I need to implement a process through DevNetOps which has to be continuous, innovative. I will be able to receive the feedback and outcomes by means of simplicity, and that can continuously monitor and optimize my network operations. This is where the DevOps is very much needed for your simplistic understanding in any of the network, no matter whether it's a 5G or beyond 5G or in your existing network. Now, let us have a quick glance with the 5G architecture overview, because I want to set up the context why the DevNetOps is important and how it is going to be part of the 5G architecture overview, though it is not a core part of our discussions, but I just would like to touch up a couple of points. So if you can see over here, this is what the very, very broad level of the 5G programmable transport architecture. So let us not have a very deep dive into the core part of it, but when we are talking about the service provider business workspace, it is basically a distributed and common telco cloud platform, right? And you do have to do a cross-domain orchestrations across the access, transport, core plus cloud, and all over together. So the services which 5G network is bringing up, that requires a lot of automation across the cross-domain orchestration that has to be performed. Now, being said that, here is how Cisco looks into all the blocks of the transport architecture. The first thing is that flexibility. So we need the transport data center to be flexible. That's what we need, the automation. Then capability to be understood and timing speed of the intellectual properties. Programmability, you need to control the day 0, 1, and 2 operations. And all these three together coming into the umbrella of automation. So you would like to make the things to be deployable with a zero-touch provisioning. Means when I'm going to do, I do not need to automate in such a way that I want to have the less human interactions, and my whole network would be automated. Orchestrations, the footprint, and the performance are the three key parts over there, where we are talking about the cost, multi-domain automations, architectures, and everything, and those things are also plugged in with the security. So how the automation can be performed in a secured way, that is where we are coming from the 5G transportation building blocks. Now, being said that, we have set up the context that how the 5G transport architecture looks like and how the Cisco is going to give the value over there. Now, in the SP space, what 5G brings together? More spectrum, new radio, new service paradigm, and new network. If you can put the last 2 years during the pandemic, the usage of 5G network or any network operations has been increased. We were, rather than human interactions, the network interactions was more, because we all are able to handle many situations in a virtual mode. So that causes a lot of traffic towards the network. If we agree to that particular fact, you can see that service provider has the biggest challenge at this space in the new era, right? Because the more applications, more traffic, more human interactions being performed virtually, so everything clubbed together, 5G brings a speedier or much reliable communications all over the space. So the promise of 5G is that anything, anywhere, right? So when we say that anything, anywhere, is basically if we see the overall journey of 2G, 3G to 5G over here, it's basically enhance the mobile broadband services, private network, that includes 5G, everything has been taken care of. Scalable IoT communication services, both consumers and enterprises are being consumed over there. So not only like that, 5G promises to have the reliable network services. Now, if I would like to achieve a reliable network services, of course, I need to think about the deployment of the network in a very reliable way. Right? And I also need to think about how the network upgrade and customer experience, infrastructure upgrade, everything can be done in an automated fashion. So everywhere, if we look into the 5G network slicing or cloud native computing space, or software defined networking, which is the core part of the 5G, there we need the automations, because automations basically targets to decrease the operation cost and enhance the OpEx experience. Richard, would you like to add anything over here?
I think we're good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we can go ahead over the next space of the 5G challenges. So here in these sessions, we are going to solve a problem statement. Rather, we would like to hand it over, have a better understanding how DevNetOps address to challenge for the service providers. So when we talk in the service provider space, we have always a basic challenge statement, how we can make use of people, process, data, and things together in an efficient way. And no matter, all over the spaces nowadays in the technology talks about lot on the DevOps. Why DevOps is important? Because we would like to execute all the operations in an agile manner, in a speedier manner, and our life would like to move very fast. So we all would like to challenge the situation in a continuous way and have to visualize that how these all things together bringing business to the service provider in a faster way. So there are two concepts. The rise of cloud computing and digitization, which is leading towards the IoT space and private 5G, is a very, very challenging. So service provider always looks for a reliable way, an agile way, and a very simplistic way to deal the operations. And that is where the challenges are going to be defined today with the DevOps introducing into that space. Now, before I jump into the role of automation in 5G, do you think that automation is needed in 5G? And if yes, what are all your challenge statement over there? Then what is the challenges you face to do the automation?
I can start off with a good one. How about lack of API automation in the control set? I can't even deploy an edge node via an API. I have to go to a web page, manually put in IP addresses, manually put in IPv6, manually DNS, yada, yada, yada.
So API consistency or API feature sets.
Exactly.
And then probably, have you run across any versioning of the API being a challenge as well, or is it mostly just non-existent?
It's non-existent.
Control center.
You must go to the website and punch all this data in, and then it's like, oh, by the way, your password can't get an exclamation point.
So yeah, I understand. Yeah, so consistent APIs across there, consistent data models and stuff would be an example, okay? How about other challenges? Anybody else want to share challenges with network automation? I'm sure Cisco has that challenge for sure. I mean, that's what you're alluding to. I'm sure somewhat in the industry, we just need to do a better job of APIs. So even your cloud providers have the same challenge, or okay? Well, we can always learn to do better. In Cisco, there has been a very strong focus on improving the APIs, improving the versioning of APIs, because sometimes we do have to version for new features and not deprecate existing capabilities so your automation continues to work. There's still CLI-based automation, and we're trying to hone down on CLI changes. So that's something we're trying to do in Cisco. But other challenges, anybody else want to share other challenges they may have with automation?
Have you ever faced any challenges with respect to the operations, operation cost? Any insight on that?
Small crew.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's see. Why automation is needed? The very crucial part is that in the industry, especially the service provider industry, right? The transformation from the traditional way of architecture, from the monolithic architecture to the microservice-based architecture is a new change in the design, right? So when we talk about the cloud-native environment-based microservices, you, of course, you need a microservice deployment in a faster space. So service provider basically looks into that operation efficiency, means maintain the speed, quality and security governance that you need to be maintained, operational cost reduction, right? Operational expenditure reductions. And of course, none of the business can stand without ongoing revenue and growth, right? And we have to maintain the innovation in that space. So if you see everything together in a box, right? Operations, quality, operational expenditure reductions, and ongoing revenue and growth to be maintained, then you need the automation. Your cross-domain automations, your overall network automation is a very, very mandatory statement here. And of course, when you are a service provider, you need a zero downtime upgrade with no change window, right? You do not want to impact your network. So if you would like to do all these things in a manual way, it is highly impossible. So automation is needed, and automation has to be reliable in such a way that your network should not be impacted, right? Now, being said that, if we can understand a little bit on the 5G automation side, I must say that this is a typical software release lifecycle management which we have observed, but it is not limited to this process, because every bullet over here like scope, governance, defect, continuous test, development, everything is always continuous, right? So this cycle is dynamic, and every time you repeat it, it's like your delivery and the release lifecycle management has to be associated with it. So if you can just pay attention to the arrow which is going from here to right side to upside, which we call as a continuous deployment, that is the key part of your automation, and that is where your network automation is needed. For example, today I have a software defined to be released in my network. I would like to deploy a software, say release XYZ, deploy it. Then I had to apply a patch on it and make it a different release version, so I need to do another quick deployment, right? So continuous deployment that has to change the network configuration, that has to take care of the software releases. So together, that is a problematic statement. Am I having an automation process which can maintain the network configuration changes and software releases together in a reliable manner? That is where your DevOps are going to resolve the puzzle. Okay? So you are going to develop something, quickly validate it, quickly make it for the operation readiness, and deploy it. And this full chain has to be repeated, right? And that is where the continuous part is coming into the picture. You are going to develop continuously, you are going to test it continuously, deploy it continuously, and then monitor it, and then revert back to the cycle again once more. How frequently you can do that, that is where the automation comes into the picture. Now, the statement of this software lifecycle management, if we would like to map it into a definition of DevNetOps, right? How we should be able to do that. We have so many terms over here for the taxonomy, right? DevOps, CI/CD, GitOps, DevNetOps, and there is something called NetDevOps also. So, do we know that what is the difference of this taxonomy? Is there any insight on that?
Yeah,
why so many names in the same space?
Yeah, so to repeat the question, does anybody want to enlighten us on their views of the difference between the taxonomy of CI/CD, NetDevOps, DevNetOps, GitOps, et cetera?
It's just to incite confusion.
Yeah. Yeah. So one way that helps me is I first categorize like CI/CD more as a software methodology for software development. That helps me. And then the net piece indicates the more the networking piece. But ChatGPT can always answer this for us, and it sure did. But of course, the taxonomy gets confused.
Okay, let me make the question a little more defined, okay? Because we are here talking about more towards the network automations, right? Network automations and network operations. You might have heard about DevNetOps and NetDevOps. Can any one of you have ever thought about what is the exact difference between these two? Or do you feel that these two terms are same? It's just a confusion or biblical creations of the word?
I like your answer.
Anyone else? Okay, let me define it how I decode it, okay? Because I might not be right, but this is my way of understanding. And I would love to hear back from you, because as I am giving my information, I would love to learn from you all also, okay? So DevOps comes with the term called development plus operations, okay? When we start doing the development and operations back to back in a continuous manner, then the terms come as a DevOps, right? Now, we fill the term in between called network, where you are going for network operations to be automated. Are you developing something and then making the network change and then making it operational readiness? Or you are defining the change of your network, then developing it, and then make it as operational readiness. So this is where I'm coming from these two terms, DevNetOps, how you are automating your network. If I am going to define my network changes and then developing it and then making it operational, so it's a NetDevOps. So I'm very much considering just the network operations or configuration change to be handled. There might be a piece where I have to pay attention for software releases to be automated. I might be having a multi-vendor environment where all my vendors are coming for the VNF to be deployed in my network. I need to do the lot of acceptance check before I certify or I tell that these VNFs are ready to deploy for my network. So development is happening, You are checking the development is ready for your network or not, and making it difference that, okay, it is ready for my deployment and operational readiness. And that is where I decode the term called DevNetOps. So, I would like to go back a little bit in terms of defining the terminology. CI/CD is the very, very basic terms to start the journey of DevOps, where I, as a development engineer or the delivery cycle manager, I would like to define the whole process where I plan it, code it, build it, test it, make it the release ready for deploy, operationals, and measure the success of my release. This is where your CI and CD comes into the picture. Like, you are designing every steps till the testing to be completed as part of the continuous integrations, and then make it as a continuous deployment. Okay? Now, this term and this cycle you might have seen so many times in the moment you give CI/CD in your Google search or ChatGPT, you will be able to find out this. Now, what is continuous? That is very important for us to understand. There was a period of time where we all used to go for the waterfall development, and the development process were different. But nowadays, none of the organization follows that. We all are agile. We all are talking about safe agile process, agile development process, and so many other terminologies. Now, being said that, when we are thinking about to be agile, the first thing comes into the picture that whatever the piece of the code you develop, it has to be continuously build it up. So when you are saying that continuously build it up means I have built up a module called A, it has to be integrated with the code module of B, and that continuous integration has to happen. And that structured manner of development of your continuous integration with every piece of the code lead to a continuous delivery. And continuous delivery lead to your continuous deployment. When I am marking myself that my release is ready for delivery, it has to be tested continuously in a test bed, and that makes the continuous deployment. And this whole operations together, we mark it as DevOps. Means I'm developing it continuously, I'm making it operational readiness, and that is where it becomes continuous development and operational. Now, this is where I was defining the definition of DevOps. You are developing continuously, you are making it ready for the continuous operations, and that is where the DevOps comes into the picture. You might have seen that 2 slides before, the slide was little grayish in picture, and here we have introduced couple of colors. There is a reason behind it, because here we are going to highlight you what is the development process about, and if you can pay attention, test and release. This cycle is very common between development and operations. So this is your gate basically that will certify that you have tested your development, you have made it release ready, and you are ready to make it operational. Now, I would like to get into little deeper towards the network lifecycle management. So, we all have understood this part that people, process, tools together has to be part of the DevOps and Agile. Now, this diagram talks a lot about how from the capturing from the business requirement, continuous planning has to happen, how the tracking of every user stories has to be maintained. And this is a very typical agile process every organization follows today. What is the special over here is that when you get into a phase where your release is ready and you have the production installation has to happen, how that is being smartly managed, that is being talked about DevNetOps. Now keep this diagram in your mind for a while, and we'll come back to this diagram once more at the end of our discussions. So if we all agree at this point of time, what are all the benefits of DevOps? So we would like to get the higher customer satisfactions, customer value, good customer value, better return on investment, right? We all talk about when we are in the service provider space. Then we would like to shorten out our development life cycle. That is why we need the DevOps. We would like to be more collaborative, more performance oriented. We would like to be more targeted towards it, and that's what we need DevOps. Now, understanding this point, we would like to increase quality of the software or all those space. If I would like to understand, any one of you, that how DevOps is getting migrated to DevNetOps, any thought of that? These are all 5 points basically talk about what are all benefits of DevOps. Now, DevOps to DevNetOps journey, do you have any thought that what could be the transition over there? Any thought? Okay, let me emphasize how it is going to. So, DevNetOps is the applications of DevOps philosophies, principles, and behaviors to network operations. So, 2 slides ago, we have seen a colorful slice of people, process, and tools, right? Now, when I am mapping that people, process, tool for the network operations and controlling the behaviors of network operations, I would like to say that it's a NetOps, and that is where the DevNetOps coming into the picture. The second thing is that the process called CALMS, C-A-L-M-S, that is culture, automation, lean, measurement, and sharing. So build up a culture together which will drive a smaller, more frequent development leading to the faster outcome. That approach we call as DevNetOps. And last but not least, when we talk about a next level of SREs, right site reliability engineering, we call it as network site reliability engineers. Nowadays we call it as NRE. So we are defining a role which is focused to continuously reliable, agile, automated, high performance network to be defined, combined with infrastructure operations. So NRE is the role who is going to certify all these network operations together in a faster manner. And that is where DevNetOps is the process and NRE is the role which can define the whole things together. Now let us understand how these tool chains and whole process are being managed by, right? There is, and at the upper block over there, we have put couple of DevNetOps tool set. This is just for an example, but not limited to this is defined the tool set, right? So if you are a DevNetOps practitioner, do you have any idea of what kind of tool set we use other than what is being documented in this slide? Any thought?
Using a different tool set.
Yep. No? Okay. Let me take these questions in a different way. Here you are able to see that 1, 2, 3, 4 circles, right? And we have defined that pre-integration, integration, pre-production, and production. Do you agree that DevOps can make all these 4 stages faster? You agree? Okay, so let me define a scenario here, right? A use case here, very specifically. You are a service provider. You have a multi-vendor environment where, say for example, Cisco is coming, Ericsson is coming, or some other vendors are coming, right? I do not want to specify any name of the customers, but you have many packages are coming from multiple vendors that you need to deploy in your network, right? This is a very simplistic and very basic use case. We often face that. So basically, my leftmost side of the block of the diagram talks about how the vendor-specific validation has to be done before you go ahead for the integration. So I have only one VNF from a very specific vendor. I have asked vendor to implement certain feature. I would like to verify those features which I have requested for my vendor to implement, is that being done? So that is being done at the partner or their partner or development lab, right? So partner is under the development, what features I have requested, they have done the validations. They said, okay, my package is ready for you to accept. Now, I as a service provider, I am getting such multiple requests from various vendors. And I need to do it in a very fast manner because I do not have time to do all these things manually. So I mostly would like to have an environment where vendor should come, do the auto deployment, and I would be able to perform the acceptance testing in a very quicker way. Imagine that scenario, you might be having more than 4 or 5 vendors, you might be having 10 or 20 features to be validated together. So if you go ahead for a manual testing, a manual integration of a lab in a test environment, it might take a month for you, right? Now, I would be going into the next stage where I have to go for those multiple vendor VNFs. Whatever features I have received, that has to be integrated. That is more complex scenarios, right? And finally, once I've completing those integrations, I have to go for the deployment when I have to be the production ready. So if I go from the left side to right side, the whole executions over a period of time in a repetitive manner, then it will take me ages. DevNetOps, with the help of the toolchain set, it defines a process which has to be faster so that all this stage gets, whatever you are seeing in this slide, it can cut short down from months to minutes, right? And when I say months to minutes, just imagine you are saving cost for resources. You are saving cost on time also, right? So isn't that an efficient process that DevNetOps are going to bring in your service provider network? Now let's see how this thing happens, a little bit deeper way, right? Software that is certified based on the outcome, that is the P4 stage, engineering department would like to build it up. They convert those software to assets. Such multiple assets are then being deployed into the integration environment. We call it as partner manifest. So if I could emphasize on the partner manifest, it means that multiple assets are being clubbed and formulated as a single release that has to be certified. And such multiple single releases, once when we clubbed it up, post-integration validations, we make it for the production readiness, and that is where we say that whatever the service I as a service provider was looking for, that has been ready for production. I can readily deploy it to the network right now. Does that make sense? So, basically, we can conclude at this point of time, DevNetOps is trying to find out any issues in my network or features ahead of time, because I am continuously building it up. I am pushing the testing more towards the left side. and that makes the thing much more easier, right? I do not have to wait till the last moment, till the production lab to find out the issue and go ahead for fixing. So risk is being pushed away from production. That is one advantage through DevNetOps. The other advantage is that you are incrementally building the service, so you can monitor it, how the service or whatever the functionality I am in need of, how good it is being implemented, right? Thus, let's be state of that. I just would like to summarize what I told you before, that the whole process, 5G services, market need the service, and which has to bring the agility to the business. That was in manual process within the time frame of months. And DevNetOps is basically going to club all together, and here you can see that the service-oriented services are being built up, which is faster time to generate the revenue, reduce the resolutions time, and increase the operational efficiency. So I'm going to reduce everything together to get a better return on investment. Make sense? Okay. Now, I don't want to put much stress on these slides, but just would like to visualize you. If you have a very complex environment where you have to do lot of testing, lot of verifications of the original build is coming from the engineering department, so this could be a very complex architecture, and DevNetOps is the solution to be provided at every steps of your solutions. So you can build up a multiple pipeline in the left side of the diagram, which I'm going to show over you, and then automate the full operations using the multiple pipeline. It may not be just the network configuration changes. You are using a pipeline to have the network and software changes both together using a single pipeline and churn it over the multiple builds to have the solution, mark it for the readiness of production. So to summarize it, DevNetOps pipeline, here you can see that onboarding the multiple vendor, then validate it, then instantiate it, continuous testing and continuous deployment. And right side, whatever I have mentioned, but pay attention that the tool set is just for your reference. It could be a different tool set also. But the basic flavor is that you are building up an enhanced experience of onboarding the workflow with enable of user access administrations. Means I could be a service provider, I could be a partner manager, I could be a tester. Based on that, my framework would give me that how to manage the resources in the back end of all the DevNetOps and find out how I can schedule my delivery, how I can deploy it, and how I can report the delivery readiness. This is what it comes into the picture, right? So just imagine following up this particular diagram of the UX. You are a service provider end, you are a customer, you would like to monitor that how many releases has been deployed for a month, right? What is the status of their acceptance? You do not need to check all this manually. You just go to the UI. You have logged in as a service provider manager, and you could access all the releases, how it has been onboarded, what are all things has been failed, how it has been security certified at your network, and then got into the deployment, right? So DevNetOps is the very simplistic solutions which can help you to monitor and to visualize what exactly happening in your network. So this is what I would like to explain you, which I have already explained, that as a vendor or partner, they are developing, verifying it, and getting notified in your DevNetOps pipeline that my development is ready. Then the same build is getting deployed into your pre-production stage, where operator is monitoring that build has been pushed and it has been come with some certain kind of network changes or network configuration changes which has to be configured. We perform the pre-change analysis, find out it has been certified at the pre-production lab and send the notifications. And the last stage, when we certify this, that is ready out of the pre-production lab, then merge it into the main branch, find out that workflow has to be triggered the moment you merge it out, deploy, test, run the analysis. Delta analysis has been specifically being mentioned because we would like to observe that what is the exact change being performed between release A and release B and notified. So this whole life cycle, it is being automated without any human intervention. And that is where DevNetOps says that multiple pipeline executions in a single set of release to be deployed can cut short of that whole month's frame of your deployment structure into minutes and minutes to seconds. Does this make sense? Before we jump into the discussions of the use cases.
We also have tool sets and systems. We're just trying to show you what it's like just generically.
Yeah. Okay, now let's understand about the DevNetOps strategy. So far we have explained this whole synergy, that how it actually talks about, we told as how the process should work and all those things. But when we come to formulate the strategy, it's basically clear-cut in a 4 bulk group, right? The first thing is that you are going to do the scope management, then code and build management, then test and defect management, and then operation and governance. So if we could define the whole process into these 4 pillars, basically our target is that as part of the scope management, define the user story, which should target that the feature I would like to develop or deploy. Then code and build management is very specific to target that secure the test-driven software delivery. So when I say that secure test-driven software delivery means I'm defining a process where the secured software libraries are being used and consumed. Bulk changes, if there is some configuration changes are needed, let's take it up, automate it through test pipeline, and so that we can perform continuous testing. And finally, define the delivery model. And that delivery model could be the service provider managed, could be customer managed, so that we can have a defined delivery model. Now, delivery model can also have a hybrid model or the cloud model or private 5G model, anywhere you would like to define. So DevNetOps is basically try to solve the development to operations in between, keeping into considerations your network changes and the software changes to be plugged in, right? So if we can now build it up with the design principles, so we can define it into a couple of blocks. As you can see, I do not want to visit all these blocks in a very defined manner, but what I would like to bring into attention at this point is that if you have the segregations of config data and the code together, right? Define a code structure, make it version control, justify its security verified, go through the change management process if needed, it may not need always, and perform the continuous testing, mark it the readiness, And that is the whole cycle comes into the picture. Now, when we map this particular strategy and the design principle all together into solution space, you can see that these are all solution space we can basically target for. So you can have the development very specific to the network function virtualizations, which we call as NFV or VNF. That requires certain kind of operational things to be taken care of when we get into the operational side. I'm starting from this blue to light blue to green sides. So I build up the NFV. Now I want to deploy it, how I should be able to do that. And there, the infrastructure as code has come into the picture, because my NFV deployment might need certain kind of configuration changes as well. And those configuration changes has been taken care by the default configuration template. That has to be clubbed with the software release and patches deployment. And the last but not least, the device upgrade, right? So this whole cycle is always a repeatable in manner, and everywhere, some of the other point we are touching that development operations, network change operations together. And this whole complete cycle, that is why defined as part of your DevNetOps solutions. Now, before we get into the ultimate takeoff of the DevNetOps as a solutions, do you think we do have some more touch point that can be addressed as part of the DevNetOps in the 5G space? Is there anything else has been left out as part of the network operations which we are missing out at this point of time? Any thought? It could be very simplistic thing as well. Okay, so let's get into that, how Cisco visualize the market segment in the SP space at this point of time, right? So from Cisco side, we have categorized these whole life cycle of DevNetOps into 5 different categories. You can see that attributes has been marked over there, and for each of the attribute, we do have the use cases and we do have the outcomes, right? So basically, when we are talking about network function lifecycle management, we are talking about workflow and multiple pipeline management, software onboarding process, artifacts management. So artifacts is nothing but your releases and config changes, artifacts deployment and certifications, and automatically test bed deployment, right? This is what you need for every delivery to happen. Then we come with the unified experience. So what do you mean by unified experience? You would like to have to operate or your network functional virtualization or network function lifecycle management in a day-to-day manner, right? And it has to be faster, continuous. So to do that, you definitely need a self-service portal from where you can just click a button to trigger the multiple pipeline for validation, for testing, for deployment in all together. I do not need to do anything every time repetitively in a manual way, right? So that is where you need a unified experience through a self-service portal. You could be a vendor manager, you could be a developer, you could be a system integration tester, whoever you could be. Based on that, the self-service portal will give you the option what operations you can perform, and the administrator can visualize from the portal that how well mannered way or how well structured way all the operations being carried forward. The third thing is that test case automation. So you build up, you made it, you have executed multiple pipelines, but you are always executing the test case, and the test cases are not an one-time activity, right? It's a multiple times you are doing that. So how quickly you can have the reusable test cases? Am I having a set of libraries that I could use it repetitively? I can customize it very easily with a less amount of investment. That is where it comes into the picture. And last but not least is the infrastructure automations, where we are talking about automate the network device configs, infrastructure as code, zero-touch provisioning. So I do not want to touch anything in the configurations file without the knowledge of anyone, right? Even if I change, the change should not break out the actual production system. So how I can protect my production environment, getting some mess up into the situation. So all this being together are part of the 5G DevNetOps use cases. Now, I would like to show you how a couple of customer spaces we have done some case study and how it actually works out. So this diagram basically talks about automation and service assurance landscape. So when you go for the cross-domain levels at the 5G space, you do have domain automation, transport domain automation, edge automation, SP cable automation, and mobile core automations. Now, there could be a space where you might be having one or multiple services has to be automated together. So if you could consider such complex scenario where the cross-domain automation has to be performed, DevNetOps is the solutions. So you can just see at the right-hand side of the slide that DevNetOps with the security assures you that cross-domain automations to be performed as a single solution. How we would like to visualize the DevNetOps? So our journey begins here. The predictability and flexibility is the motto of the DevNetOps framework. So if you would like to see a DevNetOps framework to be worked on and capture all the telco cloud KPIs together, you would like to monitor it as part of the continuous monitoring, then here is the space for your DevNetOps journey, where the first step should be the foundation ready to onboard your VNFs, minimal operation tools to monitor the node that is needed. Then let us extensify this into the feature-specific stack capability and the capacity management. So when I talk about the capacity management, means let us scale it to handle multiple pipeline, multiple releases, and finally enable it for a full-fledged DevNetOps framework where it can have a stable solutions to monitor and handle all the pilot traffic, right? So this is just a flavor to bring it in your attention that how DevNetOps can be usable for overall journey to be accomplished. Richard, you would like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll cover this slide here.
Okay.
Capacity is very important. It's all of that network ordinance, network change. In DevOps, you automate this process. You always realize that will always be data testing as a common. Batteries unreliable. I'm all set? Okay, I can hear myself better now. Yes, in the DevOps toolset, we can really be anything. I mean, we in Cisco kind of have guidance on this if you need help with it, but certainly can be any DevOps tool chain that's out there. Obviously, you have tools like Jira and Rally, kind of for more of the ticketing, Artifactory for code handling, GitLab, GitHub, Actions are popular, Bitbucket's popular. But we'll work with anybody in trying to set up a DevOps pipeline or net DevOps pipeline for what they're doing. But what I like about this slide, it indicates this looks like a software development lifecycle almost, but in terms of high mobility or 5G network, where we have a lot of VNFs and a lot of network components, we envision testing in stages, where each stage is gated to the next stage. So in this case, you may be testing a single VNF. And that single VNF that was either maybe custom built by a BU, or maybe this is a network change or software change that's associated with it, you'll go through some unit testing. And generally, it's the person who's working with that VNF or component. And then we have some component integration testing. Very simple testing here. It's more about ensuring what I've created in this stage as a single entity works to some level. Then you progress to a more secondary stage, system level testing, where you're more testing it in combination with other VNFs or a service chain or a network of other devices. And generally we find that integration is key here, interoperability, but just as generally limited to a single vendor. So this may be a single network device or component from Cisco. This could be all of ours put together. And if you exit that stage of testing, you may go into something where you're putting more and more together. And sometimes we call this pre-prod. And you want to get as close to the production network as you can. Now, we understand most customers can't replicate their entire network in a lab or even have all the hardware. So sometimes we help customers load different software emulators or software components to kind of virtualize their instance of that network and try to get as close to it as we can. There's a lot of test tools. There's a lot of IC and Cisco that we have to help you get closer to your network so we can validate that the change that's going across here and all the change from all the vendors. This doesn't have to be Cisco. We'll help you with non-Cisco as well. We come across that a lot. In terms of ensuring we can take that next step to the production deployment. So each stage is gated. The production deployment, of course, is a governance model. Nobody just lets the pipeline just automatically deploy. I mean, maybe a few customers, but generally you'll have some deployment gate here that someone has to approve this. This could be through an ITSM. It could be in your GitLab tool set. To get you to the next step. And even in production, we can run automation in the background just on health checks. A lot of the tool sets out there do health checks. There's a lot of tools by Cisco and other vendors that do it, but you can write your own automation that runs kind of in a pipeline just all the time. It's kind of in the background. Sometimes we call these crawler scripts. Again, this is IC that Cisco has. We can help you build it. There's a lot on the internet that you can find to do that. So all through this process, you're kind of building to getting to your deployment, de-risking it. Now, it looks more complex at first, and that's not what I thought. But when I started deploying this in-house for some of our network or for some of our customers, it actually simplifies it. Because what you're doing is you're putting in change here. The person that's inputting change may just be a config change, but they don't have to understand all this testing. It's already built out for them for the most part. Maybe there's some manual, but most of it's automated. And so this change here that triggers this pipeline abstracts all that other testing complexity. So a NOC engineer says, I need to enable a new WAN site that's already up, but it's got to make sure the BGP neighbors are up. You can put that change in here. It goes through all the testing through these stages and then deploys it for you through some governance model. So it actually simplifies the steps there. We can spend a lot of time on this, but actually in the world of solutions, we have a demo of this working for an enterprise network scenario, which is simple. You don't have to do 3 steps. You could always just do 1, but we like the 3 for more complex. So they did it for 1 step. And Cisco's working on providing the intellectual capital that's associated with this testing. So you don't have to create it. Now, you want to take it and modify it for use, but if you want to jumpstart it, we have capabilities with Cisco to give you some of this intellectual capital that's behind the scenes in different areas. In certain areas, we've done a lot more and less. We do a lot in enterprise as well, so you can apply this to enterprise networking to help you get through the stages a lot faster. Of course, we also offer consulting services on these, setting this up as well. But the demo they have in the world of solutions is a change here triggers this pipeline in a single step to deployment. And in that pipeline, it checks to make sure the config is right. It lints the config changes. And there's actually data models that we're creating to standardize the configuration to make it very easy in a DevOps model. So you're just changing YAML files for configuration. I want to spend a lot more time, but I can keep moving. If you're more interested to see me after the class, I can take you down to the demo they have of this and show you some of the work they've done to make this IC repeatable. Now, it is based on enterprise, but it is applicable in concept to the 5G network space. So Deepta, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Richard. So based on that, whatever we concluded so far, so we would like to emphasize what explained by Richard at this point of time, the workload test scenarios, right? So onboarding, instantiation, configuration, operations, scaling, healing, update or upgrade, and termination. So I understand those terms are self-explanatory, but still just to iterate that what Richard mentioned over here is that you upload the artifacts, create the descriptors, package, upload the package into catalog, then you need to upgrade the network activity and connectivity, process the configurations, start, stop, or suspend the network operations, scale it up or down depending on your requirement. In case your change is in effect and it doesn't get successfully applied, you need to have to the backup or recovery to be done. And last but not least, you need to do some image upgrade or processing or image update that has to be taken care of. And if that doesn't work successfully, how to remove it, network connectivity and termination. So if you see all these steps to be performed together, you need to do the continuous testing. And it is not important that every steps you have to touch always, but it is important to understand that I need these test scenarios to be executed at some point of time during my DevNetOps life cycle or DevNetOps executions of the process, and where the test scenarios, if I could get it as an inbuilt solution in hand, it could be a better option. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So can you define a bit about the difference between unit test and integration?
Okay, so
repeat the question.
Yeah, so you would like to know what is the difference between unit test and integration test, right? Richard, would you like to answer that?
Sure. Unit test is usually a test on a single entity or a set of entities. So if I'm testing a firewall, right? So I'm doing like, maybe it's even a Palo Alto firewall that I want to put into a network infrastructure. Generally, the unit tests are just testing that feature on the firewall in isolation. Right, so it's not usually testing anything that goes beyond the firewall. So when we test integration, maybe there's a load balancer in front of that firewall, right? Maybe that firewall is instantiated in a Kubernetes cluster running as an app on-prem, or maybe it's in AWS or something like that. Now you're testing the workflow through multiple devices, multiple units. So integration is usually trying to test multiple things working together than a single entity. And so I can give you a better example probably on enterprise. Like a catalyst switch, hey, I'm going to check to make sure it's got layer 2 connectivity. It can fail over in a simple L2, L3 environment with a catalyst switch. If I had a firewall in there, now I'm testing the integration, the interaction of the firewall failures, redundancy with the firewalls, all working underneath the catalyst switch that's pulling the data for you. So you're doing in multiple scenarios. Another example would be service chaining, right, in mobility, where you're doing different, multiple VNFs all tested together. Anything you want to add to integration testing?
No, that's absolutely fine. But you need to understand one thing, that when we talk about integration test, there is a next level called service level testing, right? We shouldn't get confused about integration test with the service level testing, because service level testing is sitting in between integration and acceptance test, where you certify that the service you have requested for are in place or not. Okay, so that is what I just would like to add the point with what Richard has explained. So it's sometimes the terms are very self-explanatory, but the phases might be a little confused, and that is where you have to be very definitive when you are explaining the DevNetOps process, right? And which lab you would like to perform which type of test, that is also important for us to understand. See, the DevNetOps all about how you define the process, and here we are just describing how it can be useful, those processes to be defined, right?
And testing is so important because it's like the criteria by success that you move, right? So if you want to block the deployment, absolutely, if the tests fail, right? Now you can actually test as you go into deployment into production as well. Hey, I deployed it into production. Did it actually work? Is my application still working? What we're trying to do is segment the testing. Okay, I have a new entity. I have a new firewall capable device. Now I'm testing it with other devices, and now I'm testing the whole solution. And then I want to go deploy it, and I want to run some health checks to make sure that what I intended worked. And when you build all that out, the automation just evolves over time. You don't have to recreate it, and it becomes very quick and fast. Hey, I've got an emergency change, security alert came out, I got to either change a software version or change a config. The pipeline ensures you that that change is going to go with minimal risk. And that's the value that the testing is kind of underpinning it all. I'm being kind of selfish because I'm a big testing guy, but the underpinning of DevNetOps is, yes, culture, operations, bringing people together, but testing is a huge part of it because when you define what you're trying to do, you're also defining the success criteria that you expect to happen. And that gives a lot of value. That gives us the speed and de-risk that happens because we want these pipelines to fail. We want them to kick back because it could be configuration typo. I mean, how many times have we seen configuration typos or mistypes or keystroke errors take down networks, right? We see it all the time. And we can build something called a linter, which is a word from software that checks at least to make sure that config is textually correct. Now, you can make a config error, but let's say it's textually correct. That's just one example. And that ensures as you go through that pipeline, hey, I know the config has got the right syntax. I put in success criteria to know that if I make change, I expect a certain result. I know we're talking a lot on the testing, but it's a key part. Anything to add? Yeah.
But if for some reason it fail, that will be blocking the
Yeah, absolutely. It blocks everything. That's right. You can correct it. And you can do things like you can talk to your Jira system or Rally system and open a ticket automatically. You can send a WebEx message. There's a lot of ways to notify. One thing you have to engineer a little bit is if you have multiple unit tests going on and you progress to integration test and one of the unit tests fail or something like a firewall fails, you have to kind of make a decision. Was it the integration test that failed or did we discover something that was an escape from unit test? So you may still, let me rephrase it, I'm going to upgrade 8 devices or make configuration changes on 8 devices. You could pull one out and still push the other 7 changes. But that takes a little bit of engineering work do I really need 8 altogether? But you're right. We will block at each stage. And sometimes we call them stage gates. It's just stage gates has a waterfall taxonomy, so we just don't use that word, but think of it that way, right? If you fail the unit test, you don't go any further. You have to progress to the next stage. If you fail there, you go back to unit tests and let the person correct it. Almost looks like building software, but you're doing it, applying it to networking, right? That's correct. That's correct. You're training the network. It's kind of a cliche, but the network is code, right? The infrastructure is code. That's what we're trying to show. Yeah. And Cisco can help you with this. I mean, we're showing it from a strategy point of view, but we have IC, like the automation. We have consulting services. We have product to help. But we really were trying to make the presentation about the strategy so people can buy into the strategy. We're not trying to sell anything out of the session, but Cisco does have things that can help, but there's other things out there too, right? Other vendors and all offer comparable capabilities, and there's third party out there. A lot of people in the world solutions are starting to get to this methodology. And the one question that comes up, sorry to do that, that comes up a lot is, do I have to know a lot about network software with my NOC? Do my NOC people have to be pure software people to do this? Not necessarily, because some of the automation, like the deployment is a lot of times using like things like Terraform and Ansible. And those are much less than like a Python-based or script. There's also things like Robot for testing, where we've done a lot of abstraction. So it's almost like natural language. Like, I want to connect to this device. I want to test this. And so there's some public IC available. I can show you those after class. Cisco has some as well available through subscription that build upon that. So there's open source on the internet you can just go take to do all this kind of stuff. I mean, some of the Terraform and Ansible deployment modules are just out there and you can download them. And then Cisco has things above that, and we can always help you create them specifically if you need help. Right, so there's multiple levels. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
It's good. It's a very good question, right? And I want to get there.
But I want to check with him. Does this answer your question that you are looking for? Yeah. Okay, thank you then. Okay, let's get into that, how Cisco envisioning the DevNetOps, okay? So as Richard mentioned, that we are not here to sell something, but we just would like to give a thought process that how Cisco has built up the DevNetOps process, which basically target to make the manual operational model to an automated operational model. So you can see here that change is inserted, you are requesting for a change management, and user would like to perform manual pre-checks and then go for performing the change manually, then validate it, and if the change failed, then roll back. So these all steps used to be in manual. Now, with the automated DevNetOps, I am saying the automated DevNetOps might be, the term is misleading some point of time, but I would like to say that from manual to automated operational change, which we call the DevNetOps, these are all process. Starting from user triggers the infrastructure as code workflow, code repository being updated, and if the change failed, then roll it back and start repeating the change. As you have asked the questions, right? If my integration test failed, does my pipeline will be blocked for the deployment? So this is where the automation comes into the picture, right? So you as a person, you do not have to monitor your execution for 24/7. The DevNetOps framework itself will take care of the whole process and will ensure that if your integration test fails, I will not proceed further. I will not go for the deployment. And at the same point of time, it should identify that where my failure happens so that I will be able to open a ticket in my defect reporting tool and find out a solution for it. So basically, if I can summarize the benefit of the automated operational model as part of the DevNetOps, so it promises faster, simpler, reduced risk, repeatable, and auditable. So auditable, why it is auditable? Because you are able to monitor it, where is the failure and how the defect has been taken care of, right? Now, being said that, I am going to make it little faster on this slide because we are on top of time. So this basically visualize you that how the DevNetOps blueprint actually works. I believe I have already explained you that code and the software artifacts, how we can deploy it together. That is basically the part of the DevNetOps. But I would also like to emphasize here that the DevNetOps offers you the executions of multiple pipeline at multiple stage of your development and operational process in a smoother, faster, and auto-checked manner. And that is where this digital blueprint comes into the picture, where everything has been automated, starting from configuration management till the project management. Every corner of the piece has been digitized. So consumer decision points, this is very important, which brings the good feedback for to be developed the DevNetOps for the next level to be progressed. The first and foremost thing which I would like to highlight, that DevNetOps are applicable for greenfield and brownfield. Visibility of the performance it brings up. It can be enhanced for trusting to support of AI/ML based features. The whole industry is moving towards it, and Cisco is also considering that how to understand the efficacy in closed loop solutions and put it into the AI/ML model. It also offers you to a sophisticated consulting paired with a DevOps environment supporting the tool chains. If you have the tool chains, we can give you the consultant mode, how to implement it. And if you do not have, we can also support you to understand what type of tool chain could be good for your solutions or your organizations. And moreover, is streamline and standardize the workflow and process. So what? We understood so many things on the DevNetOps. We talk about the process, people, tools, and all those things. But ultimately, our goal is to find out an easier manner of manual operations to the engineering outcomes to be happened in a faster, reliable, higher success change rates to be done, right? And here you can see that in your organizations, if you have the network reliability engineers who are struggling to change the manual operations, DevNetOps is your solutions. You can have the automated pipeline, you can have the code test-driven solutions, and DevNetOps can get plugged into the manual operations to automated pipeline and build up the engineering outcome. So basically, it is a technology which automated, simplistic, agile, and reliable can sit on the service provider space or enterprise space, no matter which technology you are coming out, even though I'm targeting here to describe the DevNetOps in 5G network, but it can complete your entire solutions to be engineering outcome driven, which you are looking for.
And we support open source and multi-vendor as well, right? From a Cisco perspective, we understand that there will be multiple vendors involved. Absolutely, we're aligned to that. And there's open source tool sets as well.
So we have described so many things, and the last key takeaways I have just summarized here into 3 bullet points. The first thing is that mobility networks gain the reliability, velocity, and agility. Industry standard open source tools, we can use it. Or the vendor-specific tools. If you have some proprietary tools that you would like to bring it up as part of your DevNetOps solutions, you can do that very well. There is always an option. Both services are available over there to complete the journey of your DevNetOps. And DevNetOps brings together an end-to-end visibility across multiple points in networks. So if you are looking for a solutions which has to reduce the risk, reduce the cost, improve the user experience, demonstrate the network security compliance, digitally transformed your existing manual process to an automated process, bridging the gap of your end-to-end visibility, DevNetOps is the solution. Now, being said that, right side, I have quoted some figure called 50% improvement in time to market, 100% increase in software quality. So these are all points we have taken out from a couple of customers where we have already implemented the process. So this is just to give you a feeling, if you are in the continuous innovation space through the network infrastructure automations, DevNetOps is the solutions. And these numbers, 50%, 100%, whatever has been coded, will give you the confidence to understand how DevNetOps can play a crucial role. I would just like to acknowledge for these presentations, because this idea was originally submitted by Ankush Arora and Srinjoy from the APJC region. Me and Richard are here to present the idea on their behalf because they couldn't fly out from there. So we are glad to present this idea in front of you. If you would like to get some additional informations, something similar over here, feel free to reach out to CX Automation booth. We do have in the downstairs services as code demo, there, which we are explaining over here. Couple of ideas. You can find out infrastructure as code is similar over there. We have couple of sessions already covered as part of the Cisco Live 2023 here, which we have listed. That could be a good thought to come about the more better understanding on the DevNetOps, which we have already completed here.
Yeah, these sessions are,
sorry.
No worries. These have already completed, but you can download the PDF. If you want to see a pipeline that's working, where we've built all the IC, the data models. It's for ACI, I know which is enterprise, but it models the concepts here. I can take you down there, you just check out the CX automation booth and ask for the services as code demo. It's kind of in the back. It does a good job of highlighting some of the thought processes that we showed today as an example. And it's kind of a really cool demo.
Okay. So we are at the end of the session. We are top of time. We are having a last minute over here. I would request you to fill out the session service after the sessions, and that's all for this. And these points, whatever you will be accumulate, will help you to get the leaderboard to increase your chances of your daily prizes. And stay in touch with us. Continue with your educations with Cisco Live On Demand. Our libraries will be available. And me and Richard are both glad to present here our presentation today. Thank you for attending the sessions and have a nice day.